Welcome, Bucknutters, to a special prediction-filled roundtable. I'm joined by Alex Gleitman and Duane Long. We're not going to waste any time here, gentlemen, with the season opener just hours away. These two fine gentlemen were sent a series of questions to set up some predictions for the season ahead. Neither one has heard the other one's answer, so we're going to kind of go snake draft here, starting with Duane, see what's in store for the 2014 season. Duane Long, question one. The offensive MVP this season will be blank.
I think it's still going to be a successful season, so I'm going with J.T. Barrett. I think he's got to be the MVP. If this season turns out like I think it's going to turn out, we are going to have to see. He's going to have to be a guy that is, he doesn't have to be the guy. He doesn't have to be the man. He's got to get the ball around to other people, distribute it, and he's got to complete a good percentage of passes. I see right around 60%. If he does that, he's going to be the MVP. He's going to be the focus. Right now, think about Braxton Miller going down being the lead story on ESPN. Well, where do you go from there? The focus is still there on the quarterback position at Ohio State, and that's going to be J.T. Barrett's going to be just a focal point, and if he gets it done, he's going to be the MVP.
I definitely agree. J.T. Barrett's going to be intricate to Ohio State's success this year. And at the end of the year, he could turn out to be their offensive MVP. But I'm going to go with Ezekiel Elliott in the running game. I think at the end of the day, with the unknowns at the wide receiver position, at the quarterback position, they kind of, while experience in the games are limited, I think Ezekiel Elliott has shown that he can perform at this level, as can some of the other running backs in the stable. And I think earlier in the season, as J.T. Barrett gets acclimated to the bright lights and kind of has a little bit of deer in the headlights, because I think that's inevitable in some of the big games like Virginia Tech at night for his home opener, I think Ohio State could lean on running back Ezekiel Elliott early on to get things going. And someone's got to fill Carlos Hyde's void, and Elliott's the perfect guy to do that. He could be used in a variety of ways in the passing game, in the running game. His pass blocking skills, I've heard, have definitely improved year over year. So I'm going to go with Ezekiel Elliott as offensive MVP.
If this was Jim Tressel's offense, I would absolutely agree with Alex. But when you look at Urban Meyer offenses, spread offenses in general are so quarterback-centric. So that's why I went with a quarterback. I absolutely believe that was my next guy was Ezekiel Elliott.
All right, Alex, question number two. The defensive MVP this season will be blank.
Yeah, this was a tough one because I kind of have someone in each of the position units, but I'm going to go with Adolphus Washington on the defensive line. I think you have two very known commodities at the end in Joey Bosa and Noah Spence. I think teams are going to be paying attention to them this year. Michael Bennett is already being tagged as a potential first-round pick. I think a lot of attention is going to be there. So I think Adolphus Washington is kind of the guy flying a little bit under the radar on that defensive line that many are regarding as the top unit in the nation. So I think a big year from Adolphus would be very big for the offense or for the defensive line, as opposing offensive lines then really couldn't double up on some of the other three guys as much as they normally would. Two other guys I had in serious consideration, and maybe Duane has these guys in mind, were Von Bell at the safety position. I think that was a real weakness for the Ohio State defense last year in C.J. Barnett and Corey Pittsburgh-Brown. So I think Von Bell stepping up could be a big reason why the pass defense improves year over year, as well as Darren Lee at the walkout linebacker position, another position of weakness for Ohio State last year in the middle. I think Darren Lee is a strong candidate to be defensive MVP. So those are my three guys, but I'll go with Diesel, Adolphus Washington in the middle.
Alex, very interesting choice with Adolphus Washington. I think you know how I feel about him.
I thought that I was going to come in here and really shock everybody with my pick, and Alex jumped up on it. And I would argue the same reasons, that everyone is going to be focused. Noah Spence has already been projected as a first-round pick. Joey Bosa, I believe we had someone contact for Bucknuts tell us that Joey Bosa is going to be, right now he's looking like the first number one overall pick when he comes out since Orlando Pace. You've got those guys. Michael Bennett is already being projected as a first rounder. That what are you going to do as an offense coordinator? You're going to make sure you got those three guys covered. That's going to put Adolphus Washington one-on-one, and I believe in this guy. I think he's a talent. I think he's been played out of position. I think he's been injured more than we know. I think he's the guy that everyone's going to be talking about before the season is over. My other MVP, the first one's going to come to mind, is Bennett, and I would throw Joey Bosa in there. How many times have you seen a freshman have the impact he did, especially on the line? He's just that good. I think he could be a breakout guy, and if Washington is as good as we think he is, that's going to open up space for Bosa. I think this defensive line could be the one that we remember in the future. It's a benchmark for all other defensive lines in the future.
Okay, Duane. Next up, the weakness on offense will be blank.
I believe that we're looking at, we still have to look at the offensive line. You do not lose 4/5 of the best offensive line in a generation and just think you're going to go right back and everything's going to be just fine. I don't think that. I think it's starting to solidify. I've been talking about Darryl Baldwin for a while. When we put him in crunch time with the game still on the line at left tackle, I thought this guy could move over and play right tackle. Who knows where he could have been if he would have been on the offensive line all this time. They put him at defense, moved him over there for a couple of years. He just does not have a defensive lineman's mentality. Move him to offense, and he settles right in. He's an athletic, big guy. He really fits in over there. I wasn't worried about center, and Billy Price, I think, has star written all over him. But we are not there yet. We have not reached a point where these guys haven't played enough for us to really be excited about the offensive line. And I would also mention split end. We still do not have a guy who can make defenses say, we got to keep our safeties back. They can't crowd the line and play the run. They can't play the middle of the field and take the little swift guys we've got at slot receivers. We can't take them out of the game. We've got to stay back because we can't have that guy going over the top on us. That's the other thing I see missing on offense.
Alex, the weakness on offense will be blank.
Yeah, no, I think Duane hit on my number one weakness in the second point of his argument. I think inexperience on the offensive line and at the quarterback position early on in the season could be a weakness, but I think by the end of the season, fans will feel very comfortable with where those two units are at. For me, it's the wide receiver position. I think it's a complete unknown. I think they may have a guy who can emerge, and I'll kind of touch on him at one of the questions later. I don't want to give it away. But I think, Urban Meyer says they have 6 guys who they feel can play. 2 of those are hybrid guys. So you really have 4 true wide receivers who they feel can play right now. And right now, Evan Spencer, what has he really shown you? He could block, but has he been electric in the passing game? Is he going to be that guy, as Duane said, to make defenses worry about beating you deep? Devin Smith has shown us he could go out and catch the deep ball, but he hasn't really done much in the intermediary passing game. So I think Ohio State, you throw in Mike Thomas, you throw in Corey Smith, those are a lot of unknowns, and Ohio State, to me, their weakness is at the wide receiver position, especially with a redshirt freshman quarterback in there starting his first game on Saturday.
All right, Alex, coming back to you now. The weakness on defense will be blank.
Yeah, this is a tough one. There's inexperience in the secondary. I think the cornerback 2 and the safety positions. Those could be a weakness, but I'm going to go with the linebacker position. I think right now Joshua Perry and Curtis Grant have not shown us that they could be Ohio State caliber linebackers. Will they this year? Maybe, but heading into the season, to me, that's the weakness, because if Perry and Grant both aren't ready to step up to the challenge, and then you throw in guys who haven't played in Darren Lee and Chris Worley at the other linebacker position, behind those guys, you have some talent that came in with this class: Raekwon McMillan, Dante Booker, Sam Hubbard. But the question is, and Trey Johnson, who's a sophomore, but the question is, are those guys ready to step up and play? Very rarely, as Duane said with Bosa, do you see freshmen making the type of impact on a game, that makes you go, wow. And as good as Raekwon McMillan was in high school, I just don't know if he could come in and put it all together right away. So I would go with the linebacker play as the weakness of the defense.
Duane, the weakness on defense will be blank.
I couldn't agree with Alex more. You lose a Ryan Shazier, first-round draft pick, and what do you have? You're coming back to Curtis Grant, a guy who dressed but did not play because of concussions, a guy who cannot cover a fire hydrant. I mean, he can't cover. That's your guy. And then you got Josh Perry, who right now is still just an athlete playing linebacker. But behind that, you've got a lot of talent. And that's where we could, these predictions may look good early, but later on, who knows? There's a lot of talent. The staff has done a great job of fixing the fact that the linebacker talent was so down when Urban Meyer arrived. Now you got talent, but you got no experience. There's so many holes at linebacker. In time, I think those guys there's just too much talent that we're not going to end up with a good starting unit. But for right now, when we start the season, these guys are going to be, they're raw. They're young. So we'll see. And I could not agree with Alex more about Perry. Yeah, he's been in there a lot, but can you remember a play where he really said, I'm special? I don't remember seeing that play. If anything, I remember him rushing the passer more than anything, and I was projecting him as a defensive end coming out of high school, so I'm not really surprised at that. We got to be better at linebacker. It's something we've been talking about for years. We at least have the talent in place. We just got to get experience, and hopefully these young guys make us eat those words at some point in the season.
We will stick with you. The breakout offensive player will be blank.
I'm going to go with Johnny Dixon. I believe Johnny Dixon is going to have an impact right away. He's a bigger, stronger kid. He reminds me a lot of Santonio Holmes. As a high school player, I noticed he was a guy that could make big plays down the field, but he also moved the chains. He was a smart football player. He got open. He got the ball, and then he worried about running afterward, which he was quite good at. I think you're looking at the fact that both of those inside guys, Philly Brown and Chris Fields, they're gone. Dontre Wilson is going to be more of a wingback. He's going to be carrying the ball. He's going to be catching it a little bit. Curtis Samuel's another guy who comes to mind. But that's the kid that I think is really going to be. It seemed like, well, more so, I would have been even more convinced of Johnny Dixon if Miller was going to be here, because Miller seemed to find that slot receiver better than he did the split end. Now, maybe that has something to do with the split end. That's an argument I put forward before, that why we weren't seeing the ball thrown out there. But Miller was finding that slot receiver. So I think that Dixon will step up into that position and make an impact early.
Alex, you're up. The breakout play on offense will be blank.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the wide receiver position too, but I'm going to go with Corey Smith, a wide receiver, originally from Akron, but came from community college. Corey is a guy I've heard everyone that I'm close to on the Ohio State staff sing the praises of this summer, this fall. They say he is the real deal. They think he's the best wide receiver on the roster by far. He may not be starting officially on the depth chart. With Navy, they might give the nod to the seniors in Devin Smith and Evan Spencer, but I think Corey Smith is the guy you're going to see emerge, and who I referenced earlier when I was talking about breakout players. The guy I would say watch out for right behind him is Jalen Marshall. I think everyone kind of forgot about him last year as he redshirted due to injury, but I think he could be a breakout talent and an electric player for Ohio State.
I like the Jalen Marshall pick. That's a good one. And I would Alex was talking earlier about Evan Spencer as a blocker. Corey Smith is the best blocking high school receiver I've ever seen in Ohio. I saw him. You look at him, he's pancaking people out there, absolutely cold cocking guys, and just loving every minute of it. So that's really an excellent one. I didn't even think about him. But, what has Devin Smith and Evan Spencer done here to demand that they get most of the reps? Nothing. And they're seniors. So let's get the younger guys involved. And Corey Smith was a real great pick, Alex.
Let's go back quickly on Jalen Marshall. I was doing some things on J.T. Barrett. I mentioned this on the Bucknuts Morning 5 yesterday. J.T. Barrett in the 24/7 Sports Composite was the number 3 dual-threat quarterback coming out that year. The number 1 dual-threat quarterback was Jalen Marshall. All right, Alex, the breakout defensive player will be blank.
I'm going to go with Darren Lee, walkout linebacker, another guy who every source I have close to Ohio State since last year was singing their praises. I met with someone close to the team. It must have been back in February, and they were just telling me, watch out for Darren Lee, watch out for Darren Lee. Spring rolls around, what do you see? Darren Lee starting a linebacker. Fall camp rolls around, what do you see? Everyone talking about how good Darren Lee could be in Chris Ash's defense. So I'm going to go with Darren Lee. I think maybe whoever starts at cornerback 2, Gary and Conley or Eli Apple could potentially be that breakout player, and maybe one of Josh Perry or Curtis Grant finally step up this year, but I'm going to stick with Darren Lee. I think, this defense in terms of him being able to come up and play the run or drop back and defend the pass as a former safety, I think it's going to fit him perfectly, and he's going to be on the field in all passing downs as well as rushing downs. So great opportunity for the Columbus product out of New Albany.
Duane, the breakout defensive player will be blank.
Well, I had two, and Alex picked one of them, so I'll talk about the other one. I think Eric Smith, the safety from Glenville, the opportunity is there, and I think the kid's just an immense talent. And you look at, I'm just not convinced about Tyvis Powell. I just don't see a kid that is making plays. They say, well, he does his job and all that. Well, that's good enough. But you don't win championships with players who do their jobs. You win with players who make plays. And Eric Smith is such a playmaker, and he's going to be solid too. But it's just that playmaking ability, a guy who's going to read, react, run, and come and make things happen. I haven't seen it out of Powell, and I think Eric Smith's going to push him and eventually take that job away from him. I would also mention Chris Worley. I'm real comfortable with this walkout linebacker spot. Those two guys, Darren Lee and Chris Worley, is just outstanding. I remember noticing that when he was coming out of high school as a safety, how deadly he was at shutting down screens, getting out there and playing in the flats and making plays. So I think we're pretty solid there. But Darren Lee is a great pick, and I think Eric Smith's going to step up and make plays for this defense.
We've reached the home stretch here. 3 questions left. Duane, we'll start with you. This non-senior player or coach is in his last season in Columbus.
Well, for me, it's real easy. There's no Spence. I watch this kid play, and the thing that jumps out at me is how good he is, how effective he is, and he really doesn't know how to play defensive end. His hand-fighting techniques are just elementary. He doesn't have any. He just goes. He's just an athlete out there beating the guy in front of him. When he learns how to actually use his hands, get the tackle off balance, get inside the tackle's body, I believe this kid's just going to absolutely open up. And under Larry Johnson, I think that's going to happen. So many of these kids, as much respect as they had for Mike Vrabel, and as good as he was tactician, all that screaming and yelling did not do a lot of them any good. You got a guy with a different attitude who's look at the number of players he's put in the NFL, and so many of them were not highly rated guys coming out of high school. He's recruiting even better here at Ohio State. So I think Noah Spence is a guy who absolutely will not be here. The other one for me, picking a coach, I don't know how long we're going to keep a hold of Coach Herman. How many points is this guy's offense is going to put on the board before somebody's going to say, we want to go with an offense coach this time? He's proven at the highest levels. Let's go get Herman.
Alex, this non-senior player coach is in his last season in Columbus.
Couldn't agree with Duane more on Coach Herman. I think this is it, especially if he does put up numbers that they expect to, even with JT Barrett at the helm. I think that will definitely do a lot for his resume. As far as player goes, I mean, I definitely think Noah Spence would like to go this year. I think he's a guy that has the talent, and I agree that LJ, putting that all together, you could very well see Noah Spence gone. I think Adolphus Washington with a big year, he potentially could be gone as well. But I think the guy, Dan, and I didn't know if you meant early NFL entry or if you meant transfer, but I actually think keep an eye on Cardale Jones. I mean, let's see how the season plays out. Maybe JT Barrett struggles early on and Cardale comes in and plays well, or maybe JT gets hurt and Cardale has to come in and play. But I just can't see if Braxton Miller comes back next year and can play the quarterback position, and JT Barrett has a successful enough year where they say, he's our guy whenever Braxton's done here. I just don't see Cardale Jones sticking around. I hate to talk about kids potentially leaving, but I think, it is what it is. And Cardale is not happy about being named the number 2 quarterback after Braxton went down. And good for him. He shouldn't be happy. He's a competitive kid who's worked hard to turn some things around in the classroom, on the field. And, he definitely has proven he deserves a shot. So maybe he'll get it, maybe he won't. But if he doesn't, I don't see Cardale Jones here next year.
Quarterbacks don't stick around. The starter's going to eat up so many of the reps. The coach is going to keep his leader on the field, and being third-string quarterback is not a good thing. And being a second stringer behind a guy that's younger than you, that's Death Valley right there. There's no point in that. So, yeah, I would agree with that I doubt he's going to be around here if he doesn't at some point wrest away the starting job from Barrett.
Alex, one prediction nobody sees coming.
Yeah, I'm going to say Ohio State drops the game before November. Everyone's talking about a schedule of Navy on the neutral turf and Virginia Tech at home, and then you got Kent State and Cincinnati at home. But I'm going to say they're going to drop a game before November. I don't think that's something a lot of fans are expecting at this point. They have a tough game at Penn State. This weekend against Navy won't be so easy. Home against Virginia Tech, a freshman quarterback starting his first game in that type of atmosphere. I think it's going to be a lower game and a closer game than most people think. Cincinnati at home could give Ohio State a run for its money, especially if the defense isn't in order as they expect it to be. So you have those games. You have, I don't think, some people are looking at a trip to Maryland in early October. I'm not sure I see that one. Rutgers at home, not sure I see that one. But the following week at Penn State, you got to believe James Franklin has that one circled. Penn State considers Ohio State their biggest rival. He knows a signature win like that would do in terms of giving the program a little bit of juice, especially on the recruiting trail. And it's a night game on the road, a whiteout game. I've been to that stadium for whiteout games multiple times. The fan base is great. It's an electric atmosphere, and that will be J.T. Barrett's first big-time road start in that type of environment. So let's see how the Ohio State defense comes together and how Barrett comes together before we reassess. But I think Ohio State dropping a game before November is my prediction that no one's really seeing right now.
Duane, one prediction that nobody else sees coming.
I think that I know fans are going to love this. I keep looking at the Michigan game, and I think Ohio State is going to kick Michigan to such a degree Brady Hoke will get fired. I think another loss is bad enough, but I got a feeling that this team is not going to be – Michigan is just not improving. I think Ohio State's going to just kick them to such a degree that it's going to be Michigan people are going to say, okay, we didn't want to make a change this early, but we're going to have to.
Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say a majority of the people who listen to this podcast will enjoy the previous statement. Okay, last one for both of you guys. We'll start with Duane. Before Braxton was hurt, I expected the Buckeyes to blank. Now I expect them to blank.
Before, I thought that there's some games I'm scared of. I'm more scared of the Maryland game at Maryland against a team with 17 returner starters that went to a bowl. I'm a little bit more concerned about that. Ohio State will be the first team that really walk in there. You can say that Florida State, but Florida State didn't even have a team until 1947, and until Bobby Bowden showed up, Florida State was just not a football team, football power. They're coming back, but it's still Ohio State with all that tradition walking into that stadium. Night game, possibly. I'm pretty sure it's going to be an afternoon game. If both teams come in undefeated like they should, that's a concern. With Miller, I thought this team was at least a 10-2 team and could possibly go undefeated. Without Miller, I'm looking at a team that I'm more leaning toward that 10-2. I think anything better than that, it's going to be a really successful season. Just way too many holes. Lose 4 offensive linemen. Lose Carlos Hyde, the best back in the country. Lose the number 1 receiver. And now lose a quarterback early, unexpectedly, that was supposed to be, he was a possible Heisman candidate for the 3rd time in his life, and go with a freshman. It's going to be tough, really, with the away schedule. Michigan State at East Lansing at night, that's going to be tough. I couldn't agree with Penn State. James Franklin, that's a signature win early. That puts Penn State back on the map, getting the Buckeyes at home under the lights, and he wins that game. Right then, Penn State is back. So I think he's actually got that circled, as Alex said. That's going to be a tough one. So with a freshman quarterback and so little around him that has experience, those ones are going to be tough. I'm not going to be surprised at 9-3. 10-2 would be a really good year. 11-1 or better, that would be a fantastic year. I expected at least 10-2. That would have been the worst possible scenario with Miller in there. Now I think that's one of the better results that we could come through this season.
Alex, you get the last word. Before Braxton was hurt, I expected the Buckeyes to blank. Now I expect them to blank.
I think Duane hit on the money. Before he got hurt, I expected probably an 11-1 season, maybe 12-0. I think it's hard to go undefeated in the regular season 3 years in a row, but 12-0 is definitely possible. I saw 10-2 as the absolute floor. With 11-1, certainly likely. I expected them to win the Big Ten East, win the Big Ten title, and go to the college football playoff in their first year. in the first year that it's existed. Now, post Braxton Miller, I think, the floor is probably, for most programs who lose a quarterback of Miller status, I think a floor of 8-4 would be really good, but for Ohio State fans, that wouldn't really be acceptable. But I think that's the floor, but I think it's more likely they go either 9-3 or 10-2. I think those 9-3 would be a solid year. 10-2 would be a good year, and as Duane said, anything more than that is gravy, and it's a fantastic year, and you really have yourself a true quarterback of the future in J.T. Barrett if that's the case. I think I still think they're going to compete for the Big Ten East, absolutely. I think they still have a shot at winning the Big Ten title if they can get that Big Ten round, but I don't think that they will be in the playoff as a 10-2 team.
I don't think there's any chance at making a playoff at 10-2. I believe 11-1. It's still a possibility. If they go 12-0, and it is possible, we have to look at the talent on this roster and say if these guys mature, it's the only missing element. There is more talent on this roster. I would go so far as to say since John Cooper's heyday. He was such an aggressive recruiter, just like Urban Meyer is. He was more aggressive at it. As many great classes as Jim Tressel had, these guys are just more aggressive, getting more elite talent in than Jim Tressel did, more guys that everybody was recruiting nationally. There's so much talent here right now. If these guys mature, I'm telling you, 12-0 is not out of the question. It's not out of the question.
I think that's a good place to end it. From your mouth to God's ears, Duane. We thank Duane and Alex for joining us. Make sure to keep it locked to the site today, especially later on this afternoon. Lots of coverage coming out of the WAC.